Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to your interview day here at New York Presbyterian Queens, otherwise known as NYPQ. My name is Dr. Somil Parikh. I am the residency director here. I've been the PD since 2016. And today it's my honor and privilege to talk to you about our training program. We are going to spend the next hour or so talking about why this residency is the best residency in the whole wide world. So why come here? Because you want to become part of this spectacular family. So whether you are a resident from 2004 to 2014, our first decade, as many of these pictures depict, or whether you are a current resident, a resident now, once a part of this family, always a part of this family. And essentially you become part of not only a family, but a legacy of physicians that are stationed throughout the country and yes, even the globe. So a little bit of history first. We started off as Booth Memorial Hospital in 1957. We were a Salvation Army hospital. We then became NYHQ, New York Hospital of Queens, in 1993, which then became part of the New York Presbyterian Health System in 2015. So now we are New York Presbyterian Queens. We are an EM residency that is fully accredited by the ACGME with no citations. In 2002, that occurred. Then we had our first match in 2004. And so we graduated our first inaugural class in 2007. So we graduated over 17 classes plus the current 3. So basically 20 classes in total. And that means over 200 residents and fellows have come through these doors for their training and have gone into the world all throughout the globe. And we've created this extensive alumni network that we call our NYPQ family. So why else this hospital and this training program? Again, as I mentioned, we are part of the New York Presbyterian healthcare system. New York Presbyterian is always on the honor roll, right? Generally, we're in the top 10 healthcare systems in the country. This is reported by U.S. News and World Report annually. We are a level 1 trauma center. We see primarily blunt trauma, but definitely some penetrating trauma as well. We are a STEMI receiving center with a 24/7 cath lab. We are a comprehensive stroke center and thrombectomy center. We are a tertiary teaching hospital with full ancillary services. And additionally, we are the receiving hospital for many venues from which we get patients, including Citi Field, where the Mets play, where we get patients who are from either sporting events or music festivals, as well as the US Open, as well as our local airports, including LaGuardia and even JFK. So why else this program? We're a hybrid of many different types of programs. We are a community hospital. We do have somewhat of a county feel, but also really strong academic affiliations to Cornell. All of the attendings, all of the faculty here are appointed by Weill Cornell Medical College. We are the only primary emergency medicine residency program in Queens County. We're generally a single site. Most of your rotations are here at NYPQ. We are fully accredited by the ACGME, as I mentioned before, with no citations. And we are a 3-year program with very competitive salary and benefits. So speaking of salary and benefits, let's talk about our pay. So as you might notice here, in July of 22, these were the numbers. There was a generally about a $4,000 increase, since 2022 into 2023. This is, again, NYP recognizes inflation, recognizes that the cost of living has gone up, and appropriately, since COVID every year, there has been a raise of some sort. We additionally offer this housing stipend that is paid quarterly into your paychecks, directly deposited. So add another $4,000 to that, and that's these numbers here are essentially your salary. So you go anywhere from approximately $83,000 as a PGY1 to about $98,000 as a PGY3, and if you are a chief resident, you earn a little bit more, $103,000. More about benefits. We talked about the enhanced living stipend or living supplement. That was $4,000 annually, as mentioned. But in addition to that, you get $2,000 in lift credits, $1,000 essentially every 6 months, semi-annually, right? So these lift credits can be used to go to and from all of your sites. Again, your primary site is Queens, so to and from work as needed. Many of our residents use this when they are too fatigued to take the subway home or drive home. They use it to go to some of their off-service sites like Brookdale, toxicology, and EMS. In addition, you get meal credits. You get $180 per month directly applied to your ID card that you can use in our cafeteria. We pay for all of your medical licensings and any renewal. And of course, we also offer all the basics like medical and dental. So why else this program? So this slide is what I really want to emphasize, probably, sets us apart from all the other different hospitals, is the way we learn here. We tailor your education for the modern age, right? We do not believe in putting you into a classroom and just giving you hour-long PowerPoint after hour-long PowerPoint, even though I'm going to do that for the next hour, this hour-long PowerPoint. Actually, I'm using Canva, not PowerPoint. But we believe in small group didactics, in gamification, in getting into the sim lab every week, using our hands to learn ultrasound. We go to the cadaver lab once or twice a year. We do a lot of learning through blogs and our own social media accounts. We incorporate foundations in emergency medicine, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And we also use a lot of podcasts and foam in general. And again, we learn by doing, we learn by interactive methods, kinesthetic methods. We tailor your learning for the modern age. It never gets boring. So why else? There are plenty of research opportunities for you to engage in. We have a number of academic faculty that can support you in your academic endeavors, in your research, and your scholarly activity. We have international and global health opportunities, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And of course, we have 4 fellowships. We have going from our most, our oldest, essentially, our most established ultrasound, to administration, to then simulation, and then finally medical education is our most recent one, which began in 2019. So now let's talk about our patients. So our patients truly are some of the most diverse patients you'll ever encounter. Now, I know you're going to go on your interview trail. You're going to have many PDs say, hey, we take care of a diverse patient population, and that's fair. But I think many times diversity just gets conflated with we take care of minorities, primarily African American or Hispanic. But when I say diversity here at NYPQ, I mean diversity in its fullest sense. I trained at a place in Brooklyn, and I thought at that time when I was a resident and an early attending that this has to be the most ethnically diverse patient population that can ever exist. And then I came to Queens, and it was multiple levels higher in terms of diversity. We are the most ethnically diverse county in the entire United States, and I should say the continental United States. The only 2 counties with the diversity index of 77 is two counties in Hawaii, Oahu and Maui. They're at 77%, and we have a 76% diversity index. So when it comes to the continental country, continental US, we are the most ethnically diverse county that exists. Okay. There's been a little bit of our changing demographics over the last couple of years. It used to be more Eastern Asian was the highest demographic. That still is a very, very big bracket of our patient population, the Eastern Asians, primarily Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Filipino, mostly Chinese, both Mandarin and Cantonese speaking, but that's at now about 28%. And our highest bracket is actually our Hispanic and or Latino population at 35%. We have about 8% African American and another 29%, which I just call other, right? But that other includes pretty much the entire globe. So whether we're talking about South Asians, which are Pakistani, Indians, and Bangladeshi, or the entire Middle East, our Arabic-speaking population. We have multiple, European populations like Italians and Greeks, Russians. We have, French-speaking Caribbean islanders. You name it, we see it. If you think about Queens, when you go all the way from the west, right? So the Greeks in Astoria, to the Russians in Forest Hills, to the Latinos in Corona, to the Asians like the Chinese and Korean in Flushing, to the Indians and the South Asians in Jackson Heights, you pretty much travel the entire globe. Okay, 48% of our patients actually speak a primary language other than English. That doesn't necessarily mean you'll need a translator for all 48%, but our patients, 48% of them actually pick a language other than English as their primary language. Don't worry about language barrier. We don't even use that word in our ED because it's never a barrier, because we have great translation services here through Pacific Interpreters. They are video interpreters, very, very user-friendly, that helps us and enables us to communicate very well with our patients. And in addition, we have our patients are multicultural and ethnically diverse, and so is our staff and everybody around you. So language is never an issue. We really truly cater to probably the most diverse patient populations you can possibly imagine. So now let's talk numbers a little bit. So let's talk about, I guess, beds first, right? So we are a New York City urban ED, so all of these quote unquote beds that we have can really be partitioned into more treatment areas with either a curtain or a partition of some sort. So even though we have 42 beds in the main ED, that very, very frequently becomes 72 treatment areas. And then if you include hallway beds, that can easily approach 100, 110 treatment areas. Similarly, in the PZD, we have 16 treatment areas, but we can extrapolate that and increase that to about 25 to 30 treatment areas. And same thing in our urgent care area, aka fast track, aka ED South, we call it. There's 12 treatment areas, but once again can be partitioned into more treatment areas. These are our numbers, okay? Prior to COVID in 2019, we were about 122,000 visits per year. And then that has dropped since the pandemic. In 2020, we were at 85,000. That was the year that COVID started. Very, very highly acute year where everybody was really, really sick. And we went down to about 85,000, but as you can imagine, they were very, very sick. The next year was slightly higher, 93,000. 2022 was then at 99,000, and this year 2023 is projected to be at 103,000 visits per year. So we are slowly getting back to some of our pre-pandemic levels. Now, if you take this 103,000 visits annually and you take out the low acuity areas, which is fast track, right? Urgent care, ED South, as well as pediatrics. You take those two sections out, our lower acuity areas, we have about 61,000 patients that are coming into the main adult ED. And out of that 61,000, 22% are being admitted. Actually, the 22% is all of the 103,000 visits. Okay? So again, if you're walking through these doors to receive healthcare, 1 out of every 5 people gets admitted to the hospital. Now, if you take all the patients from the main ED, okay, which is the 61,000, 40% of them get admitted. So 2 out of every 5, 12% of them get a critical care consult, and 5% are admitted to one of our 4 ICUs. We have surgical ICU, medical ICU, neurocritical ICU, and the NICU, neonatal ICU. So I hope that this slide or this picture depicts truly how sick our patients are, many, many admissions, very highly acute and highly diverse. Going back to the diversity, I just wanted to mention why the diversity is also so important. Because you see so many cultures and so many ethnic diversities, you learn the subtle differences in pathology presentations. So, for example, here is the place that you'll learn that South Asians, for example, have a very, very, very bad coronary artery disease, and that in itself is a risk factor. And so, if a 35-year-old gentleman comes into the ED with chest pain, they are likely not going home because they need provocative cardiac testing. Or this is the place where you learn that if you are an elderly Chinese or Korean patient with abdominal pain, a CAT scan is necessary because there is probably some very serious pathology in their abdomen, and that patient is not going home without a CAT scan. So with that multicultural diversity comes just so many different types of pathologies that you will not see elsewhere. For example, TB, because of our patient population, many of them were born in China, in the 1900s, exposed to TB. So whether it is TB or some other diseases that we see that you won't see are malaria, for example. We've had everything from brucellosis to malaria to typhoid fever to TB, and this is all because, once again, we cater to a very multicultural and very diverse, ethnically diverse patient population. So now let's talk about our payer mix and who our patients are, essentially. So many of them are connected to PMDs in the community, and you call those PMDs and engage them in the patient's medical care. But about another 25% have no PMD. In terms of insurance, 82% of them have some type of government regulated insurance, right? So 40% Medicaid, 42% Medicare. Okay, 14% have private insurance of some sort, and then about 4% are uninsured. So, you will take care of anybody in this spectrum. You will take care of undomiciled patients who have no access to healthcare, and have poor resources in general, up to a CEO of a company, right, who is very affluent and well connected and has great insurance and a PMD in the community. So you will see the whole gamut of different types of patients in this regard. But I also must say that these are some of the nicest patients you'll ever take care of. I have worked in 8 different emergency departments my entire life, and I can just honestly, truthfully say that these are just grateful patients. They wait patiently to be seen because they know that they're going to get good health care. And once again, they are just some of the nicest patients that you will ever encounter. So where are we in terms of, let's characterize our hospital a little bit further. So are we community, are we county, are we academic? We're kind of all three. We are a hybrid of all 3 types of programs, right? So we're definitely a community hospital that serves the community of Flushing and nearby Queens. We see a lot of patients who have no access to healthcare, and therefore you can still get somewhat of a sense of that county vibe as well. But we are an academic program with strong academic affiliations to Cornell. We have multiple other ACGME accredited residencies, such as surgery, such as IM. We have OBGYN residents coming from Cornell. We have ortho residents coming from a hospital for special surgery. So there is a very, very strong academic vibe in this community hospital with still somewhat of a county vibe. So we are a hybrid of all 3. We are definitely not rural. We are, not suburban, like out in Long Island. A little bit further out is Long Island. We are an urban center here in the heart of Queens. Technically still New York City. We are in one of the boroughs of New York City. So this all makes our program very, very unique. Okay, now let's talk about the clinical learning environment. What do we do every day to optimize how we learn on shift, right, in the clinical arena? So first of all, let's talk about teaching. Do you get teaching on shift? So some days are super, super busy and you might feel like, hey, I didn't get any formalized teaching, but I'll always talk to my resident afterward and I said, hey, we just learned these 10 things. We learned them in the application of our knowledge in treating our patients, but nonetheless, you learn them. And so sometimes it's very revealing how much you can learn on shift, even if there's no hey, sit down, I'm going to teach you X, Y, and Z. You learn so much through the sheer volume of your patients just by doing. But also, there is just everyday teaching during these times. So when you sign out, right? So when you receive sign out, there's always a sign out at the board, and you go through all the patients, and that is a time for you to get good teaching in. There's frequently many educational pearls during sign out. And then not only do we sign out at the board, we then walk and we see the patients. I know what you're thinking. How long is walk rounds? Walk rounds are very, very brief. They're generally less than 10 minutes. You go, you see the patients, you introduce yourself, and that's the time, if there is a great physical exam finding, for example, that is the time that we show the residents, hey, this is a really cool case of, for example, vertical nystagmus, or this is scleral icterus that you can see, et cetera, et cetera. So there's definitely teaching at not only the board rounds, but during walk rounds as well. And then you're running the board periodically just throughout your shift. Regularly with your team and your attending, going over all the patients. Yet another opportunity to get good teaching in. Of course, there's bedside teaching when you go to see the patient with your attending. There's also a structured morning report that happens 4 days a week: Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Basically all the weekdays other than Wednesday, because you're in conference on Wednesdays. It's 15 minutes. Everybody gets together in the trauma room and we have a structured morning report. There's also something called the Raymer rotation, which is a 3rd year rotation where you are the research and medical education resident. That's the time for you to finish your research project, but also time for you to do a lot of teaching of our sub-Is, but also you do teaching to our interns as well as any medical students. So this rotation primarily happens June through November, December, which is when we have our EM bound sub-interns, sub-Is. So plenty of teaching on shift. In addition to that, your procedures and scans are protected. So what does that mean? So it's a busy place, and there are patients to be seen always, but that doesn't mean that because it's busy, you're not allowed to do a procedure or you don't have time to do a procedure. The patients will wait patiently while you take your 30 minutes to do a central line. We do not call consultants to come and do procedures here. Our residents are very procedurally savvy because they take the time to do their procedures. We don't punt, central lines to the ICU, nor intubations to anesthesia, nor chest tubes to CT surgery, nor arthrocentesis to ortho. We support our residents here. Hey, stop what you're doing. Take the time to go tap this knee. Okay, you're a part of a team. There's an attending, junior residents, senior residents, PAs. Somebody else will see the patients while you take the time to do your procedures. And the same thing goes with ultrasound and scans. And then that final hour is also protected for your wellness, but also to get you out on time. That last hour of your shift is there for you to essentially clean up and get ready for sign out. So whether that's dictating notes to the scribes or calling PMDs and getting people dispoed or discharging people, et cetera, that last hour is prepared for you to wind down and get ready for sign out so that shortly after board and walk rounds, you are able to leave. Very rarely do I see a resident here after, more than 30 minutes after their shift because of this last hour and because of everything we do to kind of ensure that you get out on time. And then scribes. What do scribes have to do with our learning environment? So, before 2015, 2016, when we had scribes, it was not infrequent that I would see residents. So not infrequent means frequently I would see residents here hours after their shift typing their notes. And it's just not healthy and it's not what we want. So scribes have revolutionized the learning environment because you are able as a physician to spend more time with your patients, going over their discharge instructions, really educating your patients, doing procedures, teaching your juniors and your students. So super important. Scribes have revolutionized our clinical learning environment so that we can spend more time doing what we went to medical school for, which is taking care of our patients, learning, teaching, etc. None of us went to med school to type notes all day, and scribes have just really given us the ability to care for our patients better. And that is not something you're going to find at other residency programs. Very few have scribes. We do have scribes here. With that being said, when you are an intern, you will write your own notes in the main ED because you have to have a year. You have to have some period of training. So you do write your own notes from June through about March after the in-service exam. If you have shown competency, kind of your whole class together graduates to using the scribes, and you're able to use the scribes for the remainder of your training. Okay, so now let's talk about our conference. So our conference is hands down awesome. There's just no easier way to put it. It is amazing. It is awesome. It is stellar. And let me tell you kind of how conference has evolved into the beast that it is today, okay? So when I came here in 2014, it was very, very different. Sorry, I came here in 2012. When I came here in 2012, it was death by PowerPoint, right? It was hour-long PowerPoint, followed by hour-long PowerPoint, followed by hour-long PowerPoint, and everybody was just kind of falling asleep in a big auditorium. Not the way to learn, right? So we slowly started to cater conference for the new age or the millennial or the Gen Z learner, right? So the biggest thing we noted was our attention span and the size of the group that you're learning in, right? So we can all agree that small group learning is better than large audience learning, right? So when you are in a smaller group of 4 to 6 residents, which is generally what the size of our small groups, that smaller learner to educator ratio truly optimizes your learning. So we do lots of small groups, whether it's small groups actually in conference or in foundations or in the sim lab, it's always in a small group that's generally about 4 to 6 residents. Truly optimizes your learning. We are highly interactive and kinesthetic. So everything from gamification, right? So we'll talk about Olympics a little bit later, Jeopardy, Cranium, all that other stuff, or whether you are just doing core lectures in small groups or in the sim lab. We are, once again, a residency that believes in learning by doing. So for example, we are in the sim lab every single Wednesday because we believe hands-on, kinesthetic, immersive experiences are truly the way to learn. We employ this 4 to 5 week cycle, which I'm going to talk about on the next slide. Going back to core curriculum, how do you learn just the core basics of emergency medicine? So, a long time ago, we used to just give you chapters to read in Tintinally. Hey, here are these 6 chapters, read them, we'll quiz you on them, and then we'll go over the questions. And that's kind of how we learned core curriculum, plus hour-long lectures. We don't do that anymore. We use Foundations in Emergency Medicine. It is a very well-established, well-known curriculum that multiple programs use, many residencies use, and it incorporates all the great things, right? So number one, it is flipped classroom, which means we give you material to learn, and then you learn it whichever way you can learn prior to coming to conference, right? So if you're a video learner, there's videos. If you're an audio learner, there's podcasts. If you are a reader or a writer, you can read the chapters or a blog post on the website, but many, many different ways to learn the material in a flipped classroom method. So then you come to Foundations and it is more of a discussion. It is not us lecturing at you. It is modular based, right? So we do the different modules, GI, then cardiology, then tox, etc. It is systems based in that regard as well. And then it's scenario based. So we go over 3 or 4 cases that then have teaching points. And so it is highly interactive, a modular systems based, case based curriculum that is amenable to all different types of learners. It's truly amazing, awesome, and it's really the way to learn the core. Giving you a textbook in the year 2023 and telling you to read chapters is just not the way to go. Okay, so that's Foundations in Emergency Medicine. We have a big focus on small groups and hands-on learning, which I mentioned. We're in the sim lab every week. We have gamification, which we'll talk about. And then we have recurring core didactics on pediatrics. Pediatrics is every 6 weeks. we'll just have a pediatric heavy day. We have repeating, every 4 weeks, we'll have an administration or operations hour where you learn systems-based practice. We do lots of critical care. I'm going to show you that in the next slide. Probably 3 hours, at least 3 hours a month that are specifically designed towards designed to teach you critical care topics. We have morbidity and mortality, which we call now SPAM, sickest person all month. We have interdisciplinary conferences with a trauma, our surgery department, essentially our trauma department, as well as our ICU colleagues, critical care. And then, of course, we also participate in all the regional conferences. We send you to all NYC conferences, as well as New York City ACEP, and occasionally the Mount Sinai Morningside West Conference for ultrasound. So we plan conference 6 months in advance. So it's done by semester. So by May, you already have the conference schedule for July through December. And by November, you have the conference schedule for January through June. So nothing is thrown together last minute. Everything is planned well in advance. As you can see here, foundations is pretty much almost every other week. So you have that core curriculum. This was the operations admin hour that I was talking about. This is M&M SPAM. We have multiple types of grand rounds. We have not only just general grand rounds, but we also have critical care grand rounds. So that's we have outside great, amazing speakers come from outside and give us grand round lecture. Not only do you have this hour for critical care, you also have our interdepartmental conference, which is right here, where we meet with ICU and go over a case or two. And then we have these lectures, which are amazing, the MCRIT lectures, which are lectures that are probably some of my favorite lectures. They are planned well in advance. A senior resident generally does them in conjunction with our critical care director. So there's lots of faculty supervision, but it takes months to organize and execute. And there is a curriculum: GI bleeds, then strokes, then cardiology, then respiratory failure, et cetera, and it's very evidence-based. Probably one of my favorite lectures. So between MCRIT, the joint conference, and critical care grand rounds, you have 3 hours that are purely for critical care. So critical care is definitely something that is emphasized here. You will learn how to take care of the sickest of the sick. You will be able to deal with and handle and treat very medically complex patients by the time you graduate. And then, of course, there's these small groups, right? So here's small groups in blue here. Here's PED small group in this peach color here. And you're doing a variety of different things in small groups. But one of those small groups, again, is always SIM, because here's SIM, here's PED SIM, because we believe in simulation every single week. We also have some interdepartmental conferences, primarily thrown by our GME department. And that's a lot of those topics can be things on wellness, like fatigue management or financial health, et cetera, or things that are pertinent to all specialties. And in addition to that, we have this amazing wellness series, delivered by Dr. Nick Lani, who is also our simulation fellowship director and our wellness champion. And she gives every 6 weeks, she will give a lecture on some type of wellness topic. And I know you might be thinking, hey, you can't really teach wellness. And to some degree, that's a fair statement, but you really can talk about wellness topics, and that's essentially what we do. There'll be a whole nother section on wellness, and we can talk about it further, a little bit later then. Another thing that you should note is that there is a group of 4 people selected every single Wednesday to do group sim in the morning. So you will probably be assigned to group sim probably once every 10 weeks. And then once or twice a year, you're selected to do morning one-on-one sim, where just you and a faculty are doing a one-on-one sim encounter together in the sim lab. It's a great way for us to assess you, but it's also a great way for you to get some one-on-one training. So, and then, I want to say probably every 10 to 12 weeks, generally when there's a 5th Wednesday of the month, we will do, it'll be a day heavy in procedural training, right? That's when we do lateral canthotomies and cricothyrotomies and transvenous bracers, et cetera, et cetera. And then we'll do an oral board simulation and we'll get lunch for everybody. So this is, in a nutshell, kind of the template of our conference. Again, I cannot tell you how amazing it is and how it has evolved into this just, amazing Wednesdays. Ask our students, ask our residents. I can wholeheartedly say that they truly look forward to Wednesdays. It is not just this, begrudging day of going to lectures and being lectured at all day. We also do tons of gamification, which is just a lot of fun. We love to keep it real, right? So, as I mentioned before, highly interactive. Like we want you guys to participate. So we've done simple things like Jeopardy. We've done Cranium. We've developed this whole Cranium curriculum. If you guys have ever played Cranium, a lot of fun. Lots of different types of games in Cranium, all designed to teach you emergency medicine. We've done EM-based scavenger hunts. We've done Escape the Room. Yes, though, our core faculty spend a lot of time. It's very labor intensive to make and create an Escape the Room. It's very creative, but so much fun executing, and our residents learn a lot when we do our Escape the Rooms. Same thing with Pecha Kucha. We do Pecha Kucha from time to time in lightning rounds, and we turn it into a competition. And then, of course, I must mention the Residency Olympics, because I don't think that is done anywhere at any other program. We have historically, the last couple of years, presented our Residency Olympics at CORD, SAEM, and multiple other conferences. We started the Residency Olympics in 2021. It starts at the beginning of the year, where we sort all of our residents into 4 houses. We have a sorting ceremony, and then every 3 months, there's a day that's dedicated to Residency Olympics. So we have Academic Olympics, which are Smart Olympics, the Pediatric Olympics, which are Small Olympics. We have the Simulation Olympics, which are Sim Olympics, and then which is very procedural heavy, etc. And then we have Ultrasound Olympics, which is Sono Olympics. Ton of fun, as you can see, incorporating all kinds of things. There was basketball at this station. There was golf at this station. This was like pediatric rashes. This was lateral canthotomy. Just a ton of fun. Gamification is truly just an amazing time and a great way to learn. Then we also have asynchronous learning, right? Our conference is 4 hours, but so that 5th hour that ACGME says you should have about 5 hours of conference. Well, we have 4 hours of conference plus 1 hour of asynchronous learning. These are all the resources that are available to you at all times, right? Both in the hospital and at home, including up to date. You can get it on your phone, at home, on site. Access Emergency Medicine is this huge website with tons of different resources, including tox manuals, ortho manuals, procedural manuals, more questions. But probably the biggest thing here is Rosh Review. We pay for every resident to get Rosh Review all year long, and there's a lot of learning through Rosh Review, just doing questions. This is what's going to get you ready for the in-service exam and your boards mostly, so everybody gets Rosh Review, and you put it all together. We have this great asynchronous learning program, another kind of big word for independent study or homework. That, Rosh Review plus peer plus all these other things that we use in conference as well, for materials that we discuss in conference, and you put it all together, and it's a great asynchronous program as well. So then on top of that, we do an oral boards practice. So as I mentioned in a prior slide, when there is, and it usually happens every 3 months or 3 to 4 months, we have a Wednesday we have a month where there's 5 Wednesdays. That 5th Wednesday is generally an oral boards day. So you have at least 2 cases, one-on-one with faculty in a room, and it's a full-on simulation, timed, etc. And it gives you practice on how to take your oral boards, okay? And that includes now, right, ABEM now has this new structured interview that's part of your oral boards. We don't do triples anymore. We don't use the kind of the software anymore, because that's all gone. Now we do this structured interview. And then there's spaced repetition also in foundations. When you are in your interactive sessions for EM foundations, you do oral boards format as well. So you put it all together, right? So amazing conference that's highly immersive and kinesthetic. with gamification and all the other things that we talked about, plus a great asynchronous learning program with multiple resources and access to Rosh review and peer, as well as this oral boards practice. You put it all together, we pass our boards. We have a great first attempt board exam pass rate. So our written is 95%. Our orals is even higher at 98%. Our residents always pass their oral boards. And then overall, everybody in this residency has become board certified, 99%. Why not 100%? Because one year, one resident decided to go into law after graduating and never actually became ABEM certified, hence the 99%. But bottom line is, we're going to teach you emergency medicine, and you're going to pass your boards, and you're going to become board certified. Now let's talk about scholarship and research, right? So for a 3-year program, we do a significant amount of research. I will say, our forte is not randomized, controlled, double-blinded studies, but we do a lot of other smaller scholarly projects, as well as many case reports, many things that are easily, publishable. We write not only the abstracts, but also the manuscripts, and they get published in EM journals. But on top of that, we present at multiple conferences throughout the year, and it behooves residents to do scholarly activity because not only is it a requirement, but it's also an opportunity to go places and present your research. Because if your work, your scholarly activity is accepted, we pay for you to go and present it. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but there's also access, every resident has access to this Google document, which is a collection of all the different projects. This happens to be just one tab. We have about 8 to 10 tabs. This is just the education or the academic department itself. You know exactly what projects are ongoing, who the residents are, who the attendings are, what the status is, and as mentioned, the residents can join these projects, be part of the team, and get great scholarly activity. We have a point system here, something called the RSA points, research and scholarly activity points. You need 100 to graduate. Every resident gets there. It's very easy. If the traditional research is not your forte, there's many ways for you to get research and scholarly activity points. Global health projects will give you RSA points, student lectures, memberships on committees, being representatives to organizations like SAM, CORD, et cetera. Don't worry. If research is not your thing, all residents graduate with ample RSA points. But once again, research is definitely available to you, and we will support you in any way or form. There's also kind of 3 times in your residency where you are dedicating time to research. Kind of in your first year, you go to a lot of the research meetings, but additionally, you have some time on your ultrasound rotation. Then in your second year, you additionally have more time on your ultrasound rotation. And then in your third year, you have your RAMER rotation, which is your research and medical education rotation. Our blog equally is kind of a source for you to access all the different projects that are going on and all the different blog posts that our residents are creating. They create blog posts on RAMER rotations, ortho rotations, and sometimes the ICU rotations. And then going back to research, we pay for you, right? Presentation of any scholarly activity will give you up to $1,000 to go and present your research. A great way to travel, and also, obviously when you go to these conferences, you are with your colleagues, a great time to bond with your colleagues and have a lot of fun. But we will send you every single year as a class to a conference. So when you first start residency in your first year, that first month, we send you to New York ASAP up at Lake George, and a great way to bond with your new classmates, but also to get a initial glance of academic emergency medicine. Then in your second year in May, we send you to SAM. We give you $1,000 for that. And then in your third year, right, you have to find a job and you have to find fellowship. You have to go on interviews. We give you $1,200 to go to ASAP. So you will go to a conference every single year. And then we also give you a subsidy if you do a global health project. So in your fourth year, you have 4 weeks of elective. Some people take it all together. Some people break it up into 2 weeks and 2 weeks and go to 2 different abroad places. Sometimes people will even take the 2 weeks in their second year. We are very flexible, but you have 4 weeks of elective. And now that the world is opening up, people are doing, global health projects a lot more so these days. So there is up to $3,000 as a subsidy, which is plenty to cover your flights, and for the most part, even housing. So this is actually up from $2,000, which we started providing in 2019. Then obviously nobody was going anywhere for a couple of years because of COVID, and so we have a little bit more money to give you. So now the subsidy is $3,000. These are just some amazing pictures of us at conferences. New York ACEP, I think SAEM, this was recently ACEP Philadelphia. This was in Las Vegas, I believe SAM 2019. New York ACEP, this was New York ACEP 2021 when we were the volleyball champions, and more cord. I believe this is cord. So again, great opportunities, not only for you to do research and to see what's going on in academic emergency medicine, but also to hang out with your colleagues and your friends, and also get to meet your alumni when you go away to these conferences. We also have a track system here. What are tracks? Tracks are essentially small interest groups. So basically interest groups, right? So they are like-minded individuals with like interests. These are the 9 tracks that we've had over the years. Currently, and the current tracks are all dependent on resident interest. So currently right now, there's not a ton of EMS or sports medicine interest, so we don't have those current tracks right now, but we have all of the other ones. We have academics, admin, critical care, global health, pediatrics. That has a subdivision of pediatric critical care, simulation, and ultrasound. So you have to sign up for at least one track. We do it at the end of August. You can change every year. So if you want to switch into a new track or add a track, generally residents will be bare minimum from 1 track up to 3 tracks. This is a great way for you to gain additional exposure to these things. You get great training in all of these things anyway, but this is above and beyond that, right? So generally, and everybody does their own thing. So some tracks meet a little bit more often than others, but I would say about every 6 to 8 weeks, there's a track meeting. It's generally offsite. It's at a restaurant or bar, and you talk about research. You maybe do journal club. You talk about current research projects in the ED, or you brainstorm projects. Same thing with quality improvement projects. So it's a great way for like-minded individuals with the same interests to talk about current things in their track, and also just a great way for you to prepare to get the fellowship of your choice. So if you want to go into admin, be part of the admin track. It looks good on your CV, and it helps you get a fellowship a little bit later down the road. Now let's talk about your evaluations. You are evaluated extensively. A resident can never say, hey, I didn't know how I was doing, because you are constantly getting feedback. So we use MedHub here, which is a very user-friendly software that does all of our evaluation system, and it is our residency tracking software. We have end of shift evals. So basically after every single shift you do, you will get within 24 to 72 hours, and we have a great compliance rate by our attendings, and attending will fill out a short evaluation, okay, which with comments. So they'll give you a numerical score. They'll tell you, what you did well, what you need improvement on. They'll talk to you about your any procedures you did, as well as your documentation. So it's a brief but frequent evaluation every single shift. Sometimes residents say it's too much information, but you always know how you are doing, and you know how you did on every single shift. Your peers evaluate you. Nurses evaluate you every 6 months. Patients will evaluate you from time to time. You get evaluations on all your off-service months. And then you put it all together. We sit down with you twice a year. We go over your milestones. How are you doing in your procedures? How are you doing with your lectures? How are you doing with your shift work, your clinical work, your Rosh review, etc. That's your biannual eval. That's typically twice a year, and it is primarily you sit down with one of the APDs. Okay, and then of course you get direct feedback all the time as well. So you put it all together. 360-degree evaluation system that is very robust and very thorough. But the flip side to that is you also evaluate us, right? So that's important. How are we going to get better? How are attendees going to get better? So there's anonymous surveys that are sent out every week in the weekly conference email. You can fill those out. And again, it is anonymous. We don't know who is saying it. So residents are very free and open and to write what they truly feel. Every 6 months, again, there's anonymous attending evals. This is how we train and coach our attendings. If one particular attending needs a little bit more coaching on how to better thrive in an academic environment and how to teach better, this is where your evaluations come in. So we take these very seriously, and we always take your feedback and we incorporate them into actionable change. I mentioned the anonymous surveys in the weekly conference email. In January, February, you fill out ACGME surveys, which help us mold our residency into the optimal residency for you. There's GME Town Hall. We have an NYP virtual ombudsman. We send out a ton of, if I need an opinion on something, I'll send it out either via Slack, which is our kind of our residency text messaging system, or through SurveyMonkey. So basically, plenty of opportunities for you to tell us how we are doing. This is a picture at one of our retreats. That is, why did I put this here? Because the retreat, the first part of the retreat for 4 hours is a comprehensive, extensive residency review. We send out all these surveys prior to the retreat. You guys fill them out, and then we go over every single question, essentially. And it goes over every single rotation, every single, not only rotation, but also lecture, a type of lecture and conference, and then residency elements in general. It's a very comprehensive review that we do at the retreat when we go to on our annual retreat in May. In terms of procedures, do not worry, you will be procedurally savvy if you train at this program. Plenty of procedures to go around. For example, here is a log of procedures. 11 crikes over the 3 years. Now, granted that those are not all done on patients. Maybe one or two of them have been done on real patients, but the majority of some of these things you just don't see on a daily basis. But again, we have a great simulation program, and you will learn these procedures in sim if you don't see them every day. But in terms of like the bread and butter stuff, intubations 135 this resident logged, right? Peds 10. Multiple 22 femorals, 57 IJs, 11 subclavians, lumbar puncture 17, plenty of ortho stuff. You definitely get your 10 vaginal deliveries in. This one was, this resident logged 23, transvenous pacers 9, pericardiocentesis 6, and then look at all of these resuscitations, right? Whether they are medical, trauma, adult, or peds. Plenty of resuscitations to go around. This resident had 544 resuscitations. So again, that is an attestament to how sick our patients are here. So you will get your hands dirty. Okay, so what about afterwards, right? After you graduate, applicants ask me this all the time. What do your residents go on to do? So in terms of alumni, I will say many of them are academic. Some of them are purely community or clinical, but a lot of our residents are from the New York area or the surrounding states, so they go back home or they stay here, or they're somewhere in one of these major places, the Northeast. We have a lot of residents that go back to the West Coast because they live there or they're from there, Florida, the Midwest, and Texas, kind of our big areas, but also we have residents that are stationed internationally in Israel, Philippines, and Singapore. I say stationed, but I'm basically mean they live and they practice emergency medicine in these countries. we I think this is important to note that over time, when residents ask me, do your residents do fellowships or go into community? 10 years ago, it was the opposite. More went into community, less went into fellowships. But as you can see, as time is going on, I think that that is really the trend is to do fellowship. You don't have to, but as you can see, from class of 2020 it was only 3 out of 8, and then in 2023 it was 8 out of 9, and this year is 7 out of 9. So more and more people are going into fellowships. I've never had a resident not get into a fellowship track of their choice. If you want to do ultrasound, you're going to get into an ultrasound fellowship. You want to do toxicology, you're going to get into a tox fellowship. We make it happen. And if it's something that we don't necessarily have here, that's okay. We put you in contact with mentors. All of the emergency medicine is a small world. We all know each other, especially PDs and fellowship directors. And we put you in touch with the right mentors that eventually make you get the fellowship of your choice. So here's a prime example, toxicology, right? So we had a resident who was really interested in toxicology, and we're not a tox center. Occasionally we would excuse him from our own conference to go to tox conferences, and we put him in touch with multiple mentors in the New York area, and then he matched he matched in toxicology. Same thing with EMS, wilderness. These are not necessarily fellowships that we have here, but it is our duty. It's our privilege to connect you with mentorships, with mentors, to help you, help you in your career path, whichever way you plan to go. So let's talk about our attending staff. We have 32 full-time faculty here, 17, so basically 53% trained at NYPQ. And then if you throw all the per diems in there as well, that's 51. That now goes up to 51. Still, 49% of them trained at NYPQ. So I think that speaks volumes as to what's going on here. Our residents and our fellows genuinely want to stay after their training is over. Unfortunately, we only have X number of spots, so we have to turn some of them away. But for the most part, it's an amazing place to work, so people genuinely want to stay after they train here. In terms of pediatrics, we have 10 pediatric, PEM fellowship trained attendings. 7 are full-time, 3 are part-time. And then in terms of ultrasound fellowship trained, we have 12 faculty. 8 of them are full-time that do your scan shifts, and there's another 4 part-time as well. Simulation. Now let's talk about a simulation a bit. So we started I would say, the simulation department existed in some form prior to 2015, but it truly became a strong, sub-department within emergency medicine round about 2015 when we hired this guy, right? Rich Shin. Rich Shin is amazing. He's fellowship trained. He came to us in 2015, and he essentially built the simulation department from, kind of bare bones what it was up to the beast that it is today. We have a fellowship that started in 2017, and we've matched 9 fellows. We are probably it's probably the biggest, that and ultrasound, the biggest sub-department in emergency medicine. Obviously, there's pediatrics as well. But, a huge sub-department of emergency medicine here. We have 10 current faculty that are SIM fellowship trained, including our 2 fellows currently. We have, as mentioned before, you are in the sim lab every single week to reinforce all your clinical skills. I cannot say that enough. That is very unique to this program. I think in a lot of other programs, you are lucky to see the sim lab once a month, maybe once every 3 months in some cases, but here you are in the sim lab every single week. We have a multitude of sim research projects, and those not only include actual projects, but those include new simulation models that we create and design. We have a 3D printer, and so we're able to make a lot of cool simulation models to learn from. We also make a lot of cases that are then published in the MedEd portal. So lots of simulation, and our sim team participates and presents all throughout the year. Right, annually, every January they go to IMSH, which is this picture up here, and they present all their research. But anytime there's a local or a national sim wars, we always sign up. And if we win the lottery, we go and we participate. And I am very happy to announce that we are actually the current SAEM first place winners in Sim Wars that just happened recently in May of 2023. And then on top of that, we have a brand new learning and simulation center. Okay, so this has been in the works since before COVID, and then because of COVID, things kept getting pushed back. And every year, I'd be like, "It's opening up this year. It's opening up this year," and finally, I can say it is now open. It opened in May of 2023. It is a beautiful space. It's our space because emergency medicine controls sim in the entire hospital. So this is our space. This is your educational space every Wednesday for all your sim. It's got two full-on, fully equipped simulation rooms with then two side debrief or conference rooms where you can even watch videos of your encounters. There's a control room with that typical one-way mirror where we can see what the residents are doing. The residents can't necessarily see us in the control room. There is a full-on library with multiple resources and another large study area with computer workstations. So you can use this space also to study, sometimes do your charts, whatever it is that you need to do. It's really a beautiful new space. And actually, I'll show you the next slide. The next slide is essentially pictures of our new space. It is just a really good space in general, and we're very happy to have opened it in May of this year. Going back, again, as I mentioned, we are a simulation for the entire hospital. We teach everyone everything, right? So we teach ACLS to all of the providers in the hospital. We run BLS classes. We do ATLS as well to our surgical and trauma residents. In terms of pediatrics, we do PALS. We do neonatal resuscitations and pediatric codes for our pediatricians and our neonatologists. We do lots of ultrasound training, EFAST, for surgical residents, for trauma. We do renal bladder ultrasounds for renal fellows. We do critical care ultrasounds for cardiology fellows and MICU fellows, et cetera, et cetera. So we really do teach through simulation and through our sim center the rest of the department. And because of that, we gain mad respect, right? Everybody respects us. We have an amazing relationship with the other departments. Largely because we teach them, we instruct them through simulation. So this is an example of our sim teams throughout the year. This is circa 2019, 2020, and then this is over here in the top left. This is our most current sim team that won first place at SAEM in Sim Wars in Austin, Texas. Ultrasound. So let's talk about ultrasound. We have a great ultrasound program here as well. It is continuously growing and growing. We have two dedicated month-long rotations. So one in your first year and one in your second year. Okay, a lot of training programs will match first-year anesthesia with ultrasound. We used to do that. We don't do that, like the tube and lube. We used to do that, but now we actually give you 2 weeks of anesthesia, solely anesthesia, where you're in the OR all day, because you're not only doing airway, you're also doing adult airway, you're doing pediatric airway, you're doing nerve blocks, and you're doing moderate sedation and spinal anesthesia. So you have that for 2 weeks. And so now when you are on your ultrasound rotation, you're primarily focusing on your ultrasound. But in addition to that, you also have what we call your critical care lectures, where you are, for 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours, you are in the sim lab one-on-one with one of our critical care faculty, getting one-on-one lectures. I mean, that's unheard of, right? Where you have a one-on-one lecture in the sim lab for 3 hours twice a week for 4 weeks. So an amazing curriculum. You have it not only in your first year, but also in your second year. The second year curriculum is newer, but when you are on your ultrasound month, you'll learn great critical care simultaneously. And probably one of our fortes is critical care ultrasound, because we ultrasound pretty much everybody that comes through the trauma room, right? You're doing an EFAST on everybody who's in trauma, a rush exam on everybody who's hypotensive, undifferentiated dyspnea, you're doing lung and cardiac, et cetera, et cetera. So as mentioned before, we have an ultrasound fellowship here with 2 fellows, and we two fellows per year. We have a 12 ultrasound fellowship trained faculty. We do weekly tape review, which is a great way to ensure quality. You get feedback on all your scans when faculty and residents and fellows review your scans in tape review. You need 400 scans to graduate. Our residents on average graduate with 580, so above and beyond that. We've had residents get as high as 1,500, 1,600 scans. So plenty of ultrasounds to go around. You will, hands down, no doubt about it, learn ultrasound when you are here. So you can go into your community, and you will definitely be a great sonographer. We have multiple machines. We have 2 TEX mind rays. Those are our newest machines. And in addition, we have some older mind rays as well, some older models. We also have 6 that are handheld, right? So most people are aware of Butterfly. They're aware of that company. But in addition, these are actually really good ultrasounds too, the handheld mind rays, the TE Airs. So we have 6 of those. We have another 4 machines here. We have 1 older mind ray, and then 2 Zonaris. So you can never say that there's a shortage of machines in the ED, because there are a plethora of them. And in addition, we have 2 TEE probes. We are in the process of, right now we have 3 attendings that are TEE credentialed, and we are in the process of getting everybody else TEE certified. There's a new requirement as of July 2024. If you are not TEE certified, you cannot work trauma shifts. So trust me, everybody will be TEE certified by July. Just some great pictures of us learning via ultrasound. Again, hands-on, immersive, kinesthetic. Here is a great picture of Kevin Han, one of our recent graduates, who is learning TEE. We actually have this great TEE simulator, a perfect way to really learn transesophageal echo, lines, ocular ultrasound. We do a lot of musculoskeletal ultrasound as well. Speaking of musculoskeletal, we have a great orthopedics and sports medicine program here. We have a specialized curriculum that we teach. This is accompanied with conference lectures that our interns work with our attendings to deliver. And then our third years will actually do a blog post every time they're on ortho. So we have a plethora of different ways to learn ortho. We do plenty of research in sports medicine. Some of that is in conjunction with the sim lab, because we've created many sim models on joint reductions and nerve blocks. We do, again, a lot of orthopedic ultrasound in the ED. We use ultrasound, for example, to ensure that a shoulder is in after we've reduced it. And of course, we're doing a lot more ultrasound guided nerve blocks in the ED. Global health. Let's talk a little bit about global health. So we used to have a global health program, but it was very minimal in that, residents, in order to do a global health project, they had to find an opportunity on their own, and they had to go on their own dime, right? There was no money. And so prior to really 2018, I would say, there was really few kind of opportunities that residents would capitalize on. And go abroad to do a rotation. But then since 2018, we've been able to give a subsidy to our patients. Initially it was $2,000, now it's $3,000 through this scholarship that we set up, the NYPQ-EM Scholarship Fund. So now our residents have up to $3,000 for up to 4 weeks of global health. So typically they will do a project in the second or third year. We have gone throughout the globe, and when I say global presence. I mean, a true global presence. If you can look here, these are all the places we've been to. Multiple places in Central America, South America, multiple places in Africa, and all throughout Africa, really, the Middle East, the Far East, India, China, Korea, etc., and then even places in Europe. And we do a variety of different things. Some of it is education based, where we go to teach people. Some of it is we provide healthcare to patients who have no resources and are not connected to the medical network in their countries. And then we also have done a number of sustainable global health projects. Going back here, these are some examples of what we've done recently. So Norway has been a recent project that has been highly successful. We've done it 2 years in a row now. Our residents have gone to teach ultrasound and other things through simulation. So simulation and ultrasound primarily, but they've also been able to do flight medicine and learn also about a different healthcare system and universal healthcare. These are our residents teaching CPR in Burma. These were our residents providing healthcare in Peru, Argentina, again, flight medicine in Norway, and simulation and ultrasound in Norway. I'm just so happy that the world has now once again opened up so that we can provide also not just a global health, in terms of global health, but we're also able to go out into the community again and do some community outreach, whether it's CPR and basic BLS, ACLS type of training, or reaching out to our various diverse ethnic populations of Flushing. We do a fair share of community outreach. This is actually me at the Queen's Pride Parade. Those are my two kids over there, Sophia and Arya. Sophia is 6, Arya is 5. That's my husband actually back there with his eyes closed, unfortunately. But we were running the tent at the Queen's Pride Parade. So if you enjoy reaching out to the community and connecting to the community on an additional level, there are plenty of community outreach opportunities for you. In terms of pediatrics, you will learn to take care of kids, and not just kids, but sick kids as well. We have 10 dedicated pediatric emergency medicine attendings, right, that were fellowship trained in PEM. We have a dedicated Peds ED that's separate with 17 beds. We have 20% of your pediatric, so 20% of your shifts are in the Peds ED. We do not believe in separate months in the Peds ED because you will then lose that seasonal variability of illnesses. So for example, if we put you in the Peds ED in the summer, you'll lose out on all that respiratory illness of the winter, and then vice versa. If you're assigned in the winter, you lose out on some of the pediatric trauma that you get in the summer. So it is a longitudinal experience. We have you do Peds shift as you are doing EM shifts. Then there's Peds critical care. You have 2 weeks of that, primarily in the neonatal ICU, but also in the pediatric step-down unit, in the intermediary care unit. There is plenty of supplements during the 2 weeks in terms of pediatric simulation. You go over several cases with Dr. Brady, who is our Peds education director. There is a pediatric track also available, a sub-pediatric track, which is pediatric critical care. And once again, I must say that you will learn how to take care of kids, including sick kids. All of our residents go out into the community or onto academic places, and they report back to me that they are able to take care of sick kids. It's a very common question during the interview season from applicants. Will I be able to take care of kids when I graduate? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. So now let's talk about the shift schedule. We really truly try to optimize your circadian rhythm, and wellness is very, very important to all of us, including your faculty. We were all residents not at one point, not too long ago, many of them. So we understand how hard it is and how physically exhausting residency can be. So we try to optimize your circadian rhythm. All your nights are paired together, your days, etc. There's an equal distribution of nights and weekends amongst all residents. There is a tally sheet where we tally everybody's nights, weekends, trauma shifts, ped shifts, urgent care shifts. So everybody is essentially having an equal, fair experience. Every single EM block, you're allowed 2 requests, which gives you flexibility for life events. You got to go to a wedding, a graduation, some family event. You will always have those 2 days off. We always make it work. I can't remember the last time anybody was denied a request or not able to get off for a request. So there is that flexibility for life events. We do a combination of 8s and 12s here. I'm going to repeat that again. We do a combination of 8s and 12s. I think there is a misconception that we do all 12s, that I think that was read somewhere on some website somewhere, on some Reddit webpage or this or that, but no, we do a combination of 8s and 12s. That is super important to us. Residents have repeatedly indicated that a mixture of 8 and 12s is what they prefer. We started 8s in 2020 when COVID hit, and we found it to be very successful. So we keep track of your hours, not your shifts. But if we were to say that they were all 12 hours, basically you do the equivalent of 17 12-hour shifts, which turns out to 204 hours when you're an intern, right? That's your very first year. And we put you in the trauma room for shadow shifts, where you're working with the third year, and they're able to show you the ropes of how to run the trauma room. So you're already starting to take care of the sickest of the sick, and you have exposure even in your first year. Then every single year you have a 12-hour reduction. So in your second year, you do 16 12 hours, or the equivalent of 192 hours. You're considered a senior now. You're considered the senior on your team in many areas. So that's the year where you really learn how to see patients more efficiently and faster. And kind of start, being able to take care of an entire side. So that way, by the time you're a senior at PGY3, you have, again, 12 hours less, and you're more in the supervisory role. You are teaching the juniors, you are supervising the juniors, and so you definitely have this graduated level of responsibility through the years, which is an ACGME requirement. And then finally, if you are a chief in your third year, you will also have another 12-hour reduction at 168 hours. So this is kind of how our system, and this is also very, very competitive for New York City programs, still giving you plenty of time off and days off for you to replenish and recharge. And then lastly, let's go over our curriculum, PGY1, PGY2, PGY3. So in your first year, right? So you start with an introduction to EM. This is a great month with lots of amazing learning, lots of didactics, workshops, workshops where you're doing procedures. And then we also send you, there's a lot of social events, wellness events like the PD Welcome Party. Then we send you to Lake George. Great time to go away with your class, bond with them, get to know them, learn them, play volleyball, hopefully win the volleyball tournament, and a great exposure to academic emergency medicine. We do not just throw you into the emergency department and say, hey, sink or swim. It is a very, very great orientation month, which really prepares you for the rest of the year. Our residents love that month. It's truly just a great way to start your residency. Then again, we break it into EM and pediatric EM, but just remember it's longitudinal. You have about 7.5 weeks in the emergency department. You have that 2 weeks of anesthesia all day long, right? So it used to just be in the morning and then you did ultrasound, but no, we don't do that anymore. We actually have a full day where you're focusing on 5 different things: adult airway, peds airway, nerve blocks, spinal anesthesia, and moderate sedation, all of the above. You have that 1 month of ultrasound, 4 weeks, where you're also doing those critical care lectures. You have 1 month in the medical ICU. You have 2 weeks on OB to get all your vaginal deliveries in. On Wednesday mornings, you also do you scrub into the OR with CT surgery, so you get exposure to thoracic anatomy, VATS, chest tubes. Just a great way to just kind of supplement the chest tubes that you get here in the ED. all in your first year. You do 2 weeks of orthopedics, and then let's not forget vacation, right? So everybody gets 4 weeks of vacation. Notice what is not here: floors. History has shown that floor work does not benefit emergency medicine residents, so that is not part of the PGY1 curriculum. We would not do that to you. PGY2 year, right? You're starting to see a lot more critical care now. So again, you have 8 weeks of EM plus PCM. It is a longitudinal experience. Again, 20% of your shifts are in the PZD. You have that another 4 weeks of ultrasound, which we pair with research. It kind of really a time to get your research project going and completed. You are now in the surgical ICU. Our surgical ICU is both surgery and trauma. You have 2 weeks in the neurocritical care unit. This is actually a new rotation. This is a new unit that just opened up in July of 2023, and our residents have already, those who have rotated, have really complimented this rotation, that it's super solid and a great way to learn everything from stroke, intracranial hemorrhage, status epilepticus, etc. You're really sick neurocritical care patients. You are for 2 weeks in either the neonatal ICU or in the pediatric step-down unit. You are for 2 weeks doing rapid response teams. So that's all your rapid responses in the hospital, as well as all your MICU consults. Yet another way to really build relationships with the ICU and the rest of the hospital. And also a great way to learn critical care. And then you have 2 weeks of admin, so you get to know operations and everything that goes on beyond, behind the scenes to make an emergency department flow, whether that's patient quality, patient satisfaction, flow metrics, documentation, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great 2 weeks of a lot of meetings, but a lot of learning about systems-based practice. So 2 weeks of administration. And then, of course, let's not forget vacation. In your third year, you also have 8 weeks of pediatric emergency medicine. Again, a longitudinal experience. We send you to toxicology, to the Poison Control Center at NYU, where you have great academic toxicologists teach you toxicology, right? We are not a tox center. Most ER programs are not in New York City, so many of them will send their residents to NYU Poison Control and get to meet residents from other programs. Then you had 2 weeks of orthopedics in your first year. Now we revisit it again so you don't get rusty in your ortho, and you're exposed to it in your first year and your third year, so you have another 2 weeks of ortho. Then you have 2 weeks of EMS through FIDNY, another great rotation. You go all throughout Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, responding to EMS calls. Just an overall solid rotation. Many other New York programs also participate with FIDNY, solid way to learn EMS. You have 4 weeks of elective. Many people now, again, because of the subsidy and because the world has opened up and because we also have a global health and community outreach director, somebody who can help you set up these rotations, we have 4 weeks of elective now. If you choose not to go internationally, that's okay. Some people just go locally, or some people even do things that are in-house. We've had people do radiology, EP, cardiology, simulation, advanced ultrasound, a variety of different electives. The research and medical education rotation we talked about. This is where our third years, July through November, are teaching our sub-Is, our students, our interns, and also finishing up their research projects. This is new. Well, I won't say it's new. Historically, our residency has always sent our residents away for 4 weeks to do a trauma rotation. You're asking why, if we're a level 1 trauma center. Yes, we are, but we primarily see blunt. We see penetrating trauma, don't get me wrong, but it's not as much as we would like. We're not the quote unquote gun and knife club, so we don't get a ton of penetrating trauma. So we send you away for 4 weeks to learn that. We used to a long time ago send you to Las Vegas, then it was Jackson Memorial in Miami, and then it was more recently UPenn. UPenn ended because their residency program expanded and their residents unionized, so the writing was kind of on the wall. And now we send our residents to Brookdale. Okay, so So speaking of Brookdale, this is again, where we send our third years now. So I'll say it's the third year, but ultimately it's going to end up being in end of the second year, early third year rotation. We primarily are going to send our residents to Brookdale through the months of March through October, when the penetrating trauma is higher during the summer months. So we will send you there, and it's local. So we have saved a lot of money by sending you here, because it's number one, it's a great experience, and it serves its purpose of teaching you penetrating trauma and exposing you to penetrating trauma. But that with that money, we're able to offer our residents more money in different areas, like sending our residents back to SAM and giving them more money for global health projects, et cetera, et cetera. And we've been able to use that money to buy more resources for the department, including TEEs and things like that. ED structure, just remember that you are part of a pod, you are part of a team, so you're never by yourself, right? So there is a pod system, which, if for those of you who don't know what pods are, there are all these like kind of subdivisions within the department that help the department run a lot more smoothly. There are 2 teams, blue and green, that are 24 hours a day. You'll always have a senior resident, a junior resident, sometimes 2 junior residents, or a swing resident, and then we'll also have a scribe in every single area, and then occasionally students, right? So again, an attending senior resident, a junior resident, sometimes a second junior resident, a student, and then always a scribe. So great teams. The blue and green are 24 hours a day. Gold is primarily a PA-driven team that work with some of our attendings, and that's from 1 to 11. And then in the high acuity area is our red team, and we staff that from 9 to 1. The residents either do 8-hour shifts there, 9 to 5, 5 to 1, or they do a 12-hour shift, 11 to 11, just depending on the day. But again, these are the fun shifts. They're all fun, but our residents love the high acuity shifts as well. Then we have ED South. We do get the residents in there to do kind of bread and butter emergency medicine. That's their time to do lacerations and splinting and INDs and ocular stuff, etc. Kind of your bread and butter emergency medicine stuff. The residents are in there for 12 hours on Mondays. The rest of the time, it's primarily run by PAs. And then, of course, there is our separate pediatric ED that's 24 hours a day. This way, nobody can cherry pick. Everybody is a team, and you know the patients that you have to take care of and the patients in your pod. So now I'm going to end this presentation because the rest of this is about wellness and location. So at this time, I'm just going to end the presentation and invite you to see the next section, which is about another 20 minutes on our location, our nearby surroundings, and our amazing wellness program.